Welcome to Colonial Williamsburg. We're here just outside the historic Powhatan House. Here we're going to be touring Colonial Williamsburg into the old town. We'll get to experience what living in the 18th century was like, a living history. One of the exciting things we'll get to do is take a field trip to the actual kitchens outside of the governor's palace. So join me as we explore Colonial Williamsburg. One of the most amazing things about being here in Colonial Williamsburg is the absolutely gorgeous landscaping. Everywhere you go, everything is meticulous. One of the things that we'll get to see on this trip is how gardening was done, specifically crop growing, on a small scale. Almost every single home inside of Colonial Williamsburg has outdoor gardens. Some of the most beautiful ones are just outside of the palace, where it is a terraced and sloped, beautiful planting of heirloom crops. One of the things we got to do outside of our Nashville kitchen is look and see how I grow all of our plants that we cook, the herbs, vegetables, and fruits inside of our Nashville kitchen. It's such a different scale and slope seeing it done on such a intricate level, and the knowledge that it was being done in the 18th century, almost 400 years before any of us ever conceived of subdivisions and growing things in pots. So we'll get to experience all of that here, as well as get to eat some really wonderful food. And as always, we'll get to bring some product back with us to our Nashville kitchen that you'll get to see in a later.
That's pretty much what we got. But it is a live active yeast, and we haven't separated the strains of yeast yet, so there is no difference between a baker's yeast and a brewer's yeast. Most of or all of your yeast is coming from beer. You get about 10 times the amount of yeast at the end of your brew that you did when you start. That yeast will become the next batch of beer and your next batch of bread. So pretty much everybody is home brewing in the 18th century, and it's the ladies. It doesn't become a male-driven industry until it becomes industrialized. Typically, it's the moms, the daughters, and the sisters that are brewing for the family, because they're also the ones making the bread for the family. So the two things go hand in hand.
Was the bread done on open hearth, or was it done in like a closed cloche?
Well, if you're baking, it needs to be enclosed.
Okay.
Baking has to be enclosed. It can't be an open source. So most of us actually do not have ovens in our kitchen. Ovens don't come standard in a kitchen the way that they do today. If you don't have your own oven, whether it's a brick beehive oven like the one hiding in the wall, or the Dutch oven, the little one that's hiding behind the indoor grill back there on the side of the hearth, you will make up your dough, and you will either take it to a neighbor that you will barter with for use of their oven, or here in the city, you'll take it to the bakery. And have you ever heard of a baker's dozen? That's where this comes from. You will take your dough to the bakery. The baker will bake 13 loaves. He will give you back 12 of them. He will keep the 13th to resell as payment in his shop. You will also still have to pay him for use of his oven. But that is where baker's dozen comes from, because somebody else, more than likely, is having to bake your bread for you. Now, if you are going to afford an oven, this brick beehive oven being inside of the kitchen is very much relegated to wealth. Most of us will be using a Dutch oven like the little one that's over here.
Thank you.
Biscuits! So typically, if it's not a gingerbread, but it's something like a sugar biscuit or a chocolate biscuit, that is actually referring to a cookie.
And what is this?
Veal en papillote. So veal cutlets that were marinated for a couple of hours, and all of the marinade and all of the goodness were wrapped up inside of the parchment with the little veal cutlets, and then they are wrapped up like little stromboli so that they're airtight. And as they grill, because we do them on our 18th century indoor grill over here called the gridiron, as we broil them, which is what we call grilling, all of the marinade and the juice and everything causes them to steam, so they blow up like big fat hot air balloons, and it keeps all all that nice good moisture and flavor trapped and you don't lose it through the slats of the grill. And then the joyous part, when these go to the table, they're sealed. If this plate is in front of you, you get to pop them open so that all of the smell goes wafting around the room, and then everyone just goes, ooh and ah, and then they faint.
We have just had a fascinating look into the colonial life when it comes to baking. Specifically here at the Governor's Palace, we got to watch as we asked questions about bread baking in the 18th century and how it was done. So you'll get to see that interview in just a moment. But just outside of the detached kitchens from the palace is this terrace gardening. You'll see as the crops slope downward. And up close, you can see how everything is mounded beautifully and evenly. All of this is done as authentically as possible as it was done in the 18th century. So also, all of the heirloom herbs, spices, fruits, and vegetables are all what you would find in a 1700s garden here in Colonial Williamsburg. So for the remainder of the day, we're going to tour the colony. We'll visit the courthouse, but you'll get to see one last video shot of inside the kitchen as we are on our way out back through that beautiful, beautiful detached kitchen that actually looks like a stunning Cape house. So again, join me as we finish our tour of Colonial Williamsburg. So as I said before, this is the third day that we have been exploring Colonial Williamsburg. Behind me is the governor's mansion. On the first 2 days that we were here, we got to go inside, do a tour, which I'll show you some photographs of later, but the weather was not very cooperative, so we did not do much filming. And something I'd like to say is that while this is a traveling food blog, it's fun to go on vacation. Williamsburg was not on our roster of places to travel to experience baked goods and foods and bring things back to the kitchen, but we're doing it anyway. So join me again today, as I said before, as we tour Colonial Williamsburg.
Popularity of reels in general and Scottish reels in particular, it's just unthinkable that they wouldn't have at least included a few of them, and perhaps this one. Again, this one that Jefferson had in his collection. It's known as the Duke of Hertz reel.
So we travel around the world, but sometimes the best place to get the freshest ingredients we're putting into our bakes here in our residential kitchen in Nashville is my own backyard. So every conceivable herb is being grown here. It's early spring. Things are popping up. Beautiful cilantro, leeks. These are actually baby leeks. We have chives. We have radishes, Italian parsley, and just really everything that we need to make the freshest bakes. So sometimes you don't need to travel any further than your backyard to get the very freshest ingredients. Here in Nashville, we're in Zone Climate 7B. That enables us to grow everything from berries to peaches to fruits and vegetables. It's amazing what you can get from your tiny little backyard. We live on a ½ acre of land here in a subdivision called Hermitage, and here I'm able to grow all kinds of things. So let's go see what we've got in the little greenhouse here. This is what I call my little hothouse. This is a drop-over greenhouse that I'm growing all of what I would consider tropical things in that need to be at 80 degrees or higher. It's getting pretty warm today, so I've opened it up, and what we have here are just myriad peppers and eggplants. There are some more hot weather tomatoes that we have growing here. We've got celery and watermelon radishes. There's all kinds of things here that we can grow. You'll notice that everything here is being grown in a basket, a fabric pot, or in a plastic pot, because here it's kind of dangerous to grow in the ground in a newly formed subdivision, because a lot of times builders will bury all of the waste into the ground. So it's very important that we don't grow anything very tender or herbs that we need here in the ground so that we don't contaminate what we're cooking with. You will notice that we've got lots of fruit trees here. Those are obviously growing in the ground, but what we'll have to do when we harvest fruit off of these is we'll have to make sure that they are cooked thoroughly. So most of these trees, the plum trees, the peach trees, the pear trees, they'll all need to be cooked really well, mostly in jam, so that we make sure that we're not contaminating the food supply. So that's what we grow here in the backyard. So it just goes to show you that you don't have to travel to all these exotic places that the nomadic baker goes to. So later in the season, we'll have a good crop that we'll be able to bring in, and you'll get to see the videos on how we use these, how we dry them, preserve them, and cook with them fresh or dried.